Okay, good Friday morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you on this beautiful, sunny December morning. My name is Tim, and I will be the host for today's installment of the Urban Ecology Center's Backyard Naturalist. We're here every Friday morning to look at the natural history of the things that make up the ecological communities in our backyards, the living, the non-living, the things we can see from our backyard, the weather, the planets, the stars, the critters that are living in our houses or come from things that once were living. Our kitchens are full of plants and animals that make up the culinary ecosystem of our backyards, our houses where we live, wherever we live. And we all have our personal tastes, and this show has already covered the two most sought after flavors from my palate: maple from the maple tree and vanilla from the orchid. And after maple and vanilla, there's no really close third. For me, those are top two. Um, I've never like probably said I love ginger, um, but ginger is really important, and there are certainly things made with ginger that I absolutely love. So it has an interesting botanical story, an interesting culinary story. So this is going to be a fun one as we bring you episode 15 of season 5 of Backyard Naturalist, the Gingerbread House Rules. I also need to fess up. If you take a close look at this intro slide, the photo, I'm a little embarrassed to say that I went back and found in season 3, I kind of recycled this one. And so maybe either I'm losing some of my creative juices, but I promise I will double my efforts going forward and won't let this slip happen again uh, for a while until I forget. So with a nod to PBS, we'd like to thank the viewers like you who are here with us live or watching after live. We're glad you're here. And of course, a special thanks to those of you who are part of our subscriber community. We appreciate the extra support you give to this program that keeps it going week after week, month after month, year after year. If you'd like to learn more about a subscription, contact any of the members of the Urban Ecology Center's research team. We'd be happy to talk to you about the benefits of being a subscriber. And we also invite you to attend the final Backyard Naturalist of 2023. On December 29th, we're going to have a special open mic episode. So just a chance for all of us to bring our stories, bring our photos, our videos, our poems, our art, our jokes, bring yourself, and share yourself with us as we ring out the old year in style together here on Backyard Naturalist. The research team also coordinates the Urban Ecology Center's Eco Travel program, and there are 4 remaining spots for our trip to the magical islands of the Galapagos next February. Like I've said many times, nowhere else on the planet, with an extension up to the high Andes in Ecuador, just bursting with life and color, hummingbirds that'll come feed right out of your hands, Andean cock of the rocks. We'll have an excellent chance to see the Andean condor and other amazing wildlife. If you snorkeled or haven't snorkeled, snorkeling is made very easy on this trip, and you get to get close encounters with very cool critters. So if you're interested in this, visit our website or shoot me an email. And just a few days ago, really hot off the press, we finally finalized the details of our trip to sunny Southern California, which will be fun in February to look at the natural history of their backyards, of Amanda's backyards, former backyards, as she's going to show off some of the gems of her stomping grounds. And I can't think of a better person to show us this area. So you can now reserve your spot on this sure to be fantastic trip to an area I've never visited with some of your favorite UEC staff and friends. And again, for more information, you can visit our website or shoot us an email. This is late February. And then the final trip of the season will be to Costa Rica next August. Our first trip that will be entirely wheelchair accessible to one of my favorite spots on the planet, my second home. And we're really excited to partner with Il Viaggio in Costa Rica next August. Okay, and just a very quick reminder that we are in an excellent stretch reviewing Shooting Stars. If you haven't made it out yet, we still got maybe one of the best opportunities of the year next week. Wednesday and Thursday is the peak of the Geminid meteor showers, which is one of the more reliable meteor showers in the astronomical year. And this year, the shower coincides with a basically a new moon. So the conditions are going to be really good for viewing a shower that has produced up to 150 meteors, 150 shooting stars per hour. So if you have a chance next week Wednesday and the skies are clear, definitely worth a look before going to bed or after going to bed. Okay, now on to the star of the show, the ginger plant. And um, to me, this is a plant that I probably silently appreciated more than I really knew. Because, if we had tummy aches, you drank ginger ale. If or ginger beer, and during the holiday seasons, gingerbread cookies, gingerbread people, gingerbread houses. As a kid, you appreciate the mix of the spice paired with something sweet. I think as a kid, ginger isn't appealing in probably most kids' opinions, but when you add sugar to just about anything, uh, uh, as a kid, or I know some adults that are like this, it makes it delicious. So uh, as an adult, I came to love sushi, and I love the palate cleansing properties of ginger. It's great in smoothies, other recipes. It's complex flavors. We were talking about ginger storage best practices before the show started. Um, so what is ginger, other than this complex yumminess? From a naturalist perspective, ginger comes from a plant, and the plant that ginger uh, comes from, the ginger plant, is a monocot or monocotyledon, just like the vanilla orchid we had a few years ago, just like maize or corn, just like wheat, just like the coconut palm tree, sugar cane, bamboo. These are all monocots. So monocots produce some very delicious food for us. They're the grasses, they're the grass-like flowering plants. They're called monocots because the seeds contain only one embryonic leaf or cotyledon. So one cotyledon equals monocotyledon. And it's separated from the dicotyledons, which have two embryonic leaves and a few other distinguishing characteristics, like the layout of the veins. So one of my favorite plants is a dicot from a delicious standpoint, maple, and the other plant that I really love, vanilla, is a monocot. So they're both good. Um, this is kind of the major classification of flowering plants, separated from the conifers and the other non-flowering plants, based on successful adaptations a long time ago in the evolutionary history of the plants. So ginger is a monocot that belongs to a clade, a group called the camelinids, which have ferulic acid, blah, 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 in their cell walls. It is UV fluorescent. That's kind of cool. But then ginger follows the evolutionary line that leads them to an order with a pretty cool name, Zingiberalis. And this is a super important order with some plant species that we probably know pretty well from both a food perspective, from a houseplant perspective. An important common characteristic of plants in this order is that they are rhizomous, meaning they grow and spread usually just underground through a special root system, their rhizomes. And they usually don't have a lot of above ground material except for stems when they flower. That's not always the case. Some have a lot of above ground mass. And this order tends to have some of what we consider, from what humans consider, some of the showiest, most beautiful flowers, like the birds of paradise or the heliconia, if you ever get a chance to visit the tropics or subtropics. A lot of these plants have pretty large leaves, like the banana plants, and again, these heliconias. Um, and if any of you have traveled with us to the tropics and you've worked with Carlos, he probably taught you that it's these beautiful parts of these plants are actually not the flowers, they're the modified bracts or stamens that support the actual flowers, which you can see just are kind of inconspicuous, popping up from the shelter of those bracts. So this group has a super important relationship with a lot of different important pollinators. So from a ecosystem perspective, this is a very important group. Interact with bats and birds, dung beetles, butterflies. If you're in Madagascar, they interact with lemurs. Um, And the Gingerberalis are divided into two main groups. So there's the banana group, which has four orders, and then there's the ginger group, which also has four orders. And I'm sure we'll have to get bananas in here someday, because most of us have bananas in our kitchen ecosystem. And these two, groups share a lot of similarities, not just being delicious, but also depending on humans for their very existence because they're so popular. Um, so in the ginger group, there's a lot of well-known house plants. The prayer plant is one of the more common ones you can buy in stores. The canna lily. There are four families, as I mentioned, in this group. And then we head into one of those families is the Zingiberaceae, about 1,600 species, and many of which, like ginger, have are herbs. So the leaves can be aromatic perennial herbs. The roots, they're important ornamental plants. They're cultivated for food and their beauty. So you have plants like shell gingers, ginger lilies, torch gingers, summer tulips. And so botanically, very important group. And some of our best known spices like turmeric and cardamom also belong to the same family as ginger. And you see this particularly well with the turmeric on the left, how much it resembles the ginger root, which is something I didn't really realize. To me, turmeric was always just a spice in the bottle. For some reason, I knew more about ginger because I think it's more, at least in my world, more common to get the ginger itself. But y'all probably already knew that, but very, very, very closely related and also, I don't know, strongly sought after for their properties, both for taste and for health. And then you have the genus Zingiber, and these are the true gingers. The group radiated out of Southeast Asia, and again continued. Many of the plants in this are still well known for their culinary and ornamental value. The plant on the right is a soap plant, which is also native to Southeast Asia. But if you travel to the New World tropics, Costa Rica and other places, this has become a popular exotic ornamental. And if you fun little party trick, if you go up and you shake it, it holds so much water that you can kind of squeeze it out like it is you know, a I guess you don't really squeeze soap, but you get this foamy, kind of good smelling water that absorbed in there like a sponge. And yeah, very, very similar to the ginger that we eat. Um, it's the base of this tuberous root system that we really want. So when, uh, if you move to the plant, the Zingiber officinale is the Latin term for the ginger that we find in the grocery store. And I love this picture because it really kind of then sets a little more context. When we buy ginger either as a spice bottle or the root, you can kind of see now the tubers in relation to the rest of the plant. Um, so when you go down the supermarket aisle, you can get a little bit more context. It's that tuberous base that is what we seek. And in addition to its complex evolutionary history, ginger has a complex etymological history. So it's at least from what we have recorded in the Western world and as far back as we can go, based on records, the ginger in our English came from Old English, which came from Old French, which came from Latin. The term came from Latin, which had its roots in the Greek, which came from Prakrit, which was from Sanskrit. And so the original source of the plant and the word is likely Dravidian, which is a very old family of languages in southern India. And the base word of ginger means root. So it's an important root. So just like the biological family tree, you can kind of trace its roots phenologically. You can also trace the language of ginger way, way, way back in recorded history. So it's a very old plant, a very old word. It's been important to humanity around the globe for a very long time. And just like the banana plant, this is a true cultigen. It does not exist at all in the wild state, a domesticated plant through and through, and was likely domesticated about the same time and place as turmeric. So the two have been kind of parallel, but ginger, I think, had at least for most of the time, is, more popular. It's kind of become, turmeric has become a little more popular now. Both the rhizomes and the leaves can be ingested in this plant, either as a flavoring, as a dried herb, or straight up the root or mixed. The leaves have also been important, used culturally to weave mats and other things. And the plant itself has taken on an important religious significance that we're aware of, particularly among the Austronesians. So essentially that land between the Asian mainland and the Australian mainland. This was a plant that was carried from island to island, planted and cultivated, and then eventually made its way through maritime exchange to places like southern India and Sri Lanka, and later even as far as Madagascar and Hawaii even. So once it kind of made that maritime distribution spreading, then it kind of made its way into the land networks and was part of the great trade networks that we, learn about, that includes peppers and cloves and cinnamon. But again, we don't have written history from all around the world. But what we do have, we know that it was likely an important plant for humanity for 5,000 years. So maybe some consider it the oldest spice that humans have been working with. It was important to Confucius, who was said to eat ginger with every meal, and often carried on Chinese ships in particular to help prevent scurvy. And it was important to historical figures like Pliny the Elder in the Roman Empire, and was well known both as a spice and for its medicinal value, support for kidneys in particular. And then, I'm not going to go through this whole human part, but in 14th century England, after the fall of the Roman Empire, uh, the it became much less common and therefore much more valuable. And we know this because there are records saying that a pound of ginger was worth the same as a sheep. So I'm going to guess that means it was valuable, but I don't have much context to go by with that. So if we look at the plant and its biology, we're already thrown for a loop. I mean, we know it's a monocot. We know a little bit about it. It behaves like a plant for the most part. When it's ready for reproduction, a system of buds kind of shoots up, and you see that kind of familiar pattern that you see with its relatives that shoots above the soil. And from these buds come these beautiful and delicate ginger flowers. But this is a dead end. This is as far as it gets, because reproduction from ginger is no longer happens through the flowers anymore. It's been domesticated so long that it's actually a plant that cannot reproduce anymore. So sexually. So this if you're cultivating ginger, you don't worry about pollination like you did with the vanilla orchid and who pollinates it. The flowers look pretty and you can enjoy that. And, even some use this food plant as a landscape plant because it's got some cool properties. But this is it. It still has these flowers, but they're kind of like relics. Like they don't need them anymore. But they're still there. You can see them. And they're beautiful. But when you cultivate ginger, really you just need that big juicy tuber to plant in the ground. It just spreads like those sourdough bread recipes that you just kind of spread to friends. This is a plant that grows asexually, and all you need to do is chop off a little bit and produce more. and this is the only way you can propagate ginger. There's no other way. Um, so you might even, if you're cultivating it, you'll probably cut off that flower so that the plant invests more in the below ground root, which is, what you want. Um, so because it's no longer wild, because it hasn't been wild for a very long time, we just don't know like what the pollinators were. And if you're into ginger reproduction, you don't need to know that. So, again, just like bananas, what we care about is production. And for that, we don't need to know how the plant behaved when it was in the wild. So it really is a mystery. And for ginger, when you plant, you can plant a ginger seed, but you're calling the seed a rhizome. I mean, you're calling the rhizome a seed. It's not actually a seed. So when you get seeds, you just get chunks of the root, chunks of the rhizome. And then from that, you get the new ginger plants that sprout, but you're maintaining that rhizome system, and you get yourself a whole field full of ginger just by that spread action or transplanting the roots. So again, there's a lot more from that human side of ginger. It's a quick history search, and there's people that have written about it and the importance of ginger in history. It played a part in Prohibition when you had to skirt the rules to get alcohol, and so you had it was a Jamaican ginger that was sold for its health benefits, but because it was like a tincture, it was like 80% alcohol, and so it'd be kind of like using vanilla extract in your counter for your alcohol fix, and then so as people were getting around that, they started to sweeten it. But then the rules, when the government found out about that, they're saying there are rules that you have to have so much actual ginger related to sugar so that people wouldn't just drink it. Um, but for a while, ginger was a way of getting alcohol during Prohibition in the U.S. And it as a very valuable commodity, as valuable commodities are, oil and anything else, it had some power play in the history of the world. And so again, there's folks that have written about that, and that's a fun rabbit hole to go down to. It also doesn't take long to come across the health benefits of ginger to humans today. So there's anti-inflammatory, good for digestive health, help with nausea. Uh, Dramamine is usually the go-to, and but it makes you very sleepy. So Dramamine had a brilliant marketing mix to tap into the power of ginger and create these ginger chews, which are just ginger chews. But he got the name Dramamine on it, so that becomes attractive to somebody that I'm actually taking something, um, you know, uh, pharmaceutical here. So, but yeah, when I went on the trip to the Galapagos, these ginger chews were handy. Um, and it's a very popular ingredient around the world, not just here in the U.S. In fact, it's newer to the U.S. than other parts of the world. So very popular in all kinds of global cuisine, and that's really cool. But again, it's this, as a backyard naturalist, I'm really interested in more of the natural history, the biology. And since we've pretty much taken all the wildness and naturalness out of ginger, uh, I kind of want to know more. It's that mystery of what the plant is and what it was, and through time. So we can take instead of ending the story here, we do know that there is um, another ginger that's native to Wisconsin. So we'll introduce to you wild ginger. Not at all related to the food ginger, not even close. It's not even a monocot. This is a dicot. So this is more close to the wild ginger that you can landscape is more closely related to pepper. But it is a wonderful landscaping plants. And if there's one thing we've learned over the seasons of Backyard Naturalist is the importance of native plants to our backyard ecosystems. This is a wonderful one. It's an excellent filler. So if you've got some plantings and you want something that's just going to kind of fill the blank space, ginger is an excellent one. I'm using pen sedge in areas that are a little more sunny, ginger in areas that are a little more shady. Um, It's so because it's not going to dominate, it's not going to take over. It's just going to fill in nicely all the spaces that you want. And so, and it's a beautiful, it's I think it's a very visually pleasing plant. It goes by the name of Canada wild ginger. It's also goes by the name of Canadian snake root. Latin, it's Asarum canadense. You definitely do not want to eat the leaves of this plant. Whereas the leaves of the culinary ginger plant can help with kidneys, the leaves of the wild ginger plant can cause permanent kidney damage. So it's important to know this is not a ginger. Um, the rhizomes of wild ginger have been used by humans that have, you know, evolved with it here in the Americas, and found a way of using it for ailments and spices and everything. But you just have to be very, very careful with this one. Some of the parts of the plant have known carcinogenic properties. But as a landscaping plant, they're absolutely beautiful. And in the right light, and when sun does hit it, you do see a really cool iridescence in the leaves. And they also have these beautiful, delicate flowers. The flowers are kind of spread out low under the leaves. You can't really see them unless you look for them, which is sometimes my favorite aspects of beauty in the yard. Uh, and unlike the culinary ginger, we do know that these plants are pollinated by fungus gnats. So much simpler. Um, and simple story, which is what we thought. For decades, people in the landscaping and botanical world reported, and it was reported that um, the wild ginger is just like chocolates, pollinated by certain non-biting mosquitoes. The ginger was always reported as being pollinated by these fungus gnats, but it wasn't until fairly recently that we realized that this is actually not true. The plants are often visited by these gnats, but unlike vanilla, which we learned a few weeks ago, that the ginger also has self-pollinating flowers like vanilla. But unlike vanilla, um, vanilla requires a pollinator, either the wild or hand pollination. And then what we learned with the wild ginger is that this is a self-pollinating plant, all on their own, without the help of anyone. It's possible that a visiting insect will help with the pollinating process, but if you were devoid of pollinators, the ginger would still grow. The wild ginger would still grow. It self-pollinates. Um, and so without the help of anyone, their flowers turn into these seed pods. And then the seeds are really important to the ecosystem because they're sought after by ants. And so the ants are eating the seeds, but also dispersing them. And so the wild ginger has a lot of different ways to grow. And so it's a simple system, but a complicated system. So wild ginger can self-pollinate sexually. They can reproduce asexually through the rhizomes. So, maybe like structurally you see similarities between these plants. So maybe this is how the food ginger plant reproduced. Again, we don't know. Uh, it's and we may never know because of time and domestication. But probably the smart thing to do is to look at the closest relatives of the food ginger plant and say, and that's probably more likely how the native ginger, or I mean the food ginger, would have reproduced. And so with the cousins, with the close sisters and brothers of the culinary ginger plant, they're pollinated the way a lot of the bird of paradise, the heliconias, mostly birds, a lot of butterflies, could be insects. So very likely the culinary ginger plant was pollinated by one of those groups. Um, and that's that's pretty much the ginger plant. So it's got oh, there's the ant. It's got a storied and respectable family. I maybe my takeaway uh, is how closely related they are and how similar they are to turmeric, which again was fairly new to me as maybe neophyte in the kitchen in some ways. Um, I make a mean French toast though. But it's just it's a it's got a just an it's an interesting plant, even if because it maybe because it's full of mystery, because there's so much we don't know about it. It has a storied and respectable family, a, a long relationship with humans, a very long relationship with humans. It's had power in shaping the planet, because it's been so popular with humans, super successful, but now completely reliant on humans. But I'm pretty sure that we're willing to take on the torch of continuing the species, just because it's so dominant in our culture and so yummy. And so it makes sense that the complexity in its biology, the complexity in its natural history, the complexity in its human history is matched by the complexity of the flavors that it adds to your kitchen ecosystem. So, cheers to you, Ginger. That's Ginger. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.